You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Spaceboy Universe. I am Spaceboy, and across from me is the lovely Surlana. Take my word. It is February 17, 2018, and tonight's guest, well, there is no guest. We're going to be talking about American women code breakers of World War II. Exciting stuff. You know, Surlana will have her research on. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. That's at the SB Universe. Follow Surlana at Surlana. Follow me, of course, Spaceboy at Spaceboy Music. And follow the network that brings you all this fine programming, and that's at the SBU Network. Remember to hashtag your tweets tonight with hashtags SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. Excuse me. Hang out with the Space Cadets by going to spaceboyuniverse.com. Click the dancing chat bubble and it'll get you in with all the cool kids. Man, I hit a roadblock, didn't I? Excuse me.
What?
Don't mind. In addition to Twitter, you can find Surlana and myself, that is, on the Universe, on Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Just look for Spaceboy Universe. Speaking of YouTube, you know, you can find more than the archive of shows of Spaceboy Universe. That is, you can find video, games, and all that good stuff, video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers. Just go to Spaceboy Universe's YouTube and subscribe. It's your duty as a Space Cadet to do so. Hey, you know, if you can't catch a show live, no problemo. Take the SBU on the go with you via Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, because, man, we love to broadcast. And on that magical note, across from me, like I said, is the lovely Surlana. How are you tonight, Surlana?
Oh, no, I'm jazzed to see our eager space cadets. They do that just to irritate me, I'm sure. We got 2 of them that try to beat me into the chat room, and that's K28, and I guess that's Ty.
But congratulations to Yeg because he made it in first.
I guess he did. I have to scroll down and look.
Trust me, I already checked to see who was the winner. So, and it's nice to see your sister there. That's cool. You know, it's always great to have family join us here on the Universe. And so, you know.
Consider following us on Spreaker so we can have an even number of followers. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. So, how were you and about this last week? Anything you want to bring up before we get into our normal?
Sure. I had a nice lunch with you today. It was our belated Valentine's lunch date.
Yeah.
Hello, Solaris.
Yeah, we went to, hello, Solaris. She gets a special shout out.
We had, oh my gosh, that queso blanco is the bomb. That stuff is so good. We went to Saltgrass, free advertisement.
Blanca. Queso
Blanco.
Blanca?
Well, if we assume that cheese is male.
Okay. And then Blanco would be, but I've always thought of a nice cheese as a beautiful woman ready to be devoured.
Well, that's your problem. So,
okay.
But that stuff was awesome. And, of course, they bring you that dark bread. And that was a lot of food. It was the little loaf of bread, the two servings of chips with 1 serving of the queso, plus a small cup of tortilla soup, a baked potato plain, a chicken fried steak as big as my head.
It was huge.
A tall thing of iced tea.
Sorry about that. And you didn't finish it off because it was so much.
It was so much. I could have stayed there another hour.
Now, I got me a nice sirloin and a 12-ouncer, and I was not about to leave that behind.
No,
and,
I was really liking you today.
And I loved it how today, you said, hey, do you want any A1 or anything? No, I don't.
I didn't think it all had its smothered stuff on it.
It had its mushrooms on it, and I was like, it's perfect.
Mine was drowning in white gravy.
I did not have to put more.
I should have brought it home. I really should have, because it's not like we went out afterwards and stayed out or anything.
No, we quickly ran to the store and picked up some necessities.
That was too good to leave. That really was too good to leave.
Yeah. That's why, well, none of it left there, of course, on my plate.
No.
It all went into my belly.
I'm telling you, I could have worn this steak as a hat. It was that big.
Oh, it was, and the gravy was nice. It had a nice consistency.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I had said that we were going to go there today, and that's
sort of like we either go there for Valentine's or when we get a gift card from somebody.
Well, see, the thing is that
it's not cheap.
Today we ventured out, and I went to the Goodwill store because I'm looking for a table because I'm getting ready to turn our dining room area into a videotaping area,
and we don't use dining for dining. We don't even have a dining table.
Yeah, basically,
why would we do that?
Basically, we have 2 recliners and
two recliners and a 50-inch TV. That's our
dining area.
That is our dining right there. All right, that's our dining experience.
So, I have some ideas that I'd like to put into action and get back to doing more videos, and kind of unique videos that kind of tie in with this show, and so it'll be like Spaceboy Universe video kind of thing. But just have to wait and see how that comes together. But once I get everything put together and we get the thing set up, it won't be too long. We'll give you the announcements and see how it goes. Now, we haven't brought this up in quite some time, but Comic Palooza is coming up, and we're kind of at a point where we're on the fence. We don't know yet fully if we're going or if something needs to pay off, and you're giving me this look like you're grinding your teeth.
No, I'm as perplexed as you are, and I think the less said about it right now, the better.
All I'm just going to say is that we still would like to go, but we're looking at some different options right now. So we'll keep you posted on that, because I know that our audience has heard us at the past several Comic Paloozas.
Well, the last 2.
And it's great to do the live show remote. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, it brings a certain...
If that doesn't happen, there's still the media option to get in as media.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to give our audience an update on how that's heading up, because,
it's up in the air.
Yeah. As we get closer, we'll know more. But even if it doesn't pan out, we've got some other things.
We're going to try not to cry about it.
We'll survive with the love and the hugs of our space cadets.
There's a lot of ups and downs with this little broadcast. I would have never have guessed certain things come along with it.
Well,
we would just love to do this for a living. I don't realistically think it could happen, but we're not trying to be better than anyone else. We're not trying to overshadow anyone else. We're not trying to take away. We just do this for fun, and just there's these little bits of drama that come up every now and then I don't understand.
Well, it's life. You're living your life, and things happen. What
difference does it make if we do this? I don't know.
I mean, it's not like the responsibility of it's like a job, basically.
Boys like a job, and I'll explain a little bit more.
But I wanted to bring out that it is like a roller coaster. But to be honest with you, Surlana, we've been at this for over 2 years now, and have we really pulled the plug at any given time? Did we?
We got close because of finances, not because we didn't want to do it anymore. But we've had our ups and lots of downs where we thought maybe we should just pack this in, because it's not.
But at the end of the day, we've been blessed with people that have been very supportive, like Patrick Sporer, Solaris, Blue Raven.
People who don't know us, who get on the show first time, like our guests, seem to have a good time.
Like our last week's guest, Michael Huntington. Really enjoyed himself.
Well, that's because, like, you get these people on that have, like, your parallel interests and stuff, so that's probably why you talk to them, though.
No, but I mean, well, it's in our charter, if you will, to talk to people on our subject matters, you know. So, you know, it's you know, it is what it is. You know,
but you and I still enjoy it. We still have an enthusiasm for the topics,
and you know, and it's kind of like, let me add on to this. It's kind of like, you know, it's the journey, Surlana. You know, when you married me, you didn't know what you were getting into.
Hell yes, that's true.
I mean, you thought $20 from Yahoo Personals, and you proved Leanne.
I get a few dates, maybe go to see a
proved
movie.
Leanne wrong, and
shut Leanne up, and then move on with our lives.
And then when you look at that point in time and to now, you wouldn't you say you've been on quite an interesting journey?
Let me tell you one thing. Since I've been with you, there's not been a dull moment. And sometimes it's irritating, sometimes it's fun. But I've never been bored out of my mind with you. You've got something stirred up all the time. So,
well, you know, and
so I think I'll keep you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I like the fact that we can share. I
would say that I don't want to get into this, but this man across me puts up with a lot of crap. Let me tell you, there's not many men who would be this patient. And I got things I want to get to, so let's get on to this topic.
Well, you know, I think it was a great, you know, thing to bring this up now, because it shows, you know, because this past week was Valentine's Day, and you know, you're still here.
And boy, people don't let you forget it when you're at work. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm like, yes, we get it. I've been in a relationship for 14 years. It don't mean anything.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
It's just a day.
It's that brutal honesty.
Well, every day is supposed to be Valentine's Day when you're married to your friend.
Anyway, long story short, what I was trying to make the point here was that, you know, we have our ups, we have our downs, and, you know, we try to put our best foot forward, and you know, I'll remain the positive one out of this outfit, and hope, and
you're not going to start singing "Endless Love," are you?
No,
Thank God.
I wasn't going to think of that one. So, but anyway, I know you want to move on to other things.
Let's move on to interesting things.
I just want to say, finally, on this subject matter, is that we're going to continue to do what we can with the show, and
if not, we'll at least stay married.
Yeah.
How about that? That's the important thing.
So anyway, where do you want to go from here?
Some people have been together in our chat a long time, like decades. Yeah, you know what I found out today?
What?
That Sony blew a big chance to own the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
What?
So, you know, the Disney-Fox deal went through, right? Mm-hmm. Now they own the entire MCU, even Deadpool, because Deadpool was with Fox. Mm-hmm. So now they have the X-Men, too.
Yes, and X-Men, Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and those lame guys. Yeah. So,
you know, real quick, you know, now the only reason we haven't had a really good Fantastic Four movie is because
writing.
It was something in the contract. If they didn't write and make a movie so many years, then it would revert back to, I guess, Marvel. And
so if they crapped it up, then Marvel can have it back.
Well, not even that. It was just like they could write a crappy Fantastic Four, like the last one, you know, and still retain the rights to make movies. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just
back in 1998, Sony was offered a chance to be, you know, to guide all of Marvel movies, and the studio passed on it. Mm-hmm. So Sony was pursuing the rights to make the first Spider-Man movie. That's when it came up. So during the negotiations, Marvel said, hey, you want all the movie rights to almost every hero, including the breakout characters like Iron Man, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. They only wanted $25 million.
Yeah, they were in
Those are small potatoes considering how much these movies rake in.
Yeah, they were in hard times then.
In 98.
Yeah, because there
wasn't a superhero market for movies.
Beyond that, it was like Marvel was having a hard time financially. Mm-hmm. But you know, good for them how they, you know, managed to stick with it.
Well, Sony was like, eh. So Sony had this idea that casual fans would only care about Spider-Man. So the studio paid $10 million to acquire the rights to Spider-Man only. Mm-hmm. And of course, that came back to haunt them when Marvel started with what, Iron Man?
Yeah. Actually, it started with, believe it or not, the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, okay, well, I remember that as being crappy.
Well,
so,
there were two Incredible Hulk.
Is Blade
movies.
MCU?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so technically Blade was before all that. So it's still true. Sony made a deal with Marvel to lend out Spider-Man to the last few MCU films, including the upcoming Venom with Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
And in the lead, it falls outside of that MCU deal, but it remains to be seen if Sony is going to, play nice, keep playing nice. But 20 years ago, they could have had it all.
Well, it just goes proof positive with the new Black Panther movie. It's doing phenomenal at the box office. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but everybody is just bragging left and right how this is such a great movie. What's interesting, though, on that subject matter with Black Panther is that, when Wesley Snipes was doing Blade, he wanted an opportunity to come out with Black Panther back then. But the studio turned it down, didn't think it would be profitable, and yada yada. Another studio falling.
He was also doing drugs while he was filming too.
Tax evasion, but that's another thing too.
Well, Patton Oswalt was in that, and he was also part of the Punch Up the Script crew, and he talks about what it was like, on set with Snipes between takes and everything. Yeah, the
posting notes, like he refused to step out of character, and
he would only respond to Blade during filming, even between like your trailer, you had to address him as Blade.
Talk about getting into your character, and so it's interesting to see, but there is a push to have Blade come back to theaters and be a part of the MCU.
Yeah, it's almost everything is MCU for the exception of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is still owned by Sony, but and everything else has come back.
Do you think
to
they're going to let go of that?
That's all they've got. That's all they've got.
And they were crazy not to let the
They don't
MCU,
have much music anymore.
I was going to say to let the MCU not help them out with that product. It only benefits both of them by, with Marvel getting involved with Spider-Man. And it works out for us, the MCU audience, so that he gets to be a part of, like Iron Man and all that, and the Avengers, and which it's just really a cool time right now for comics. Now, let me you had your hand about to say something else. So I was going to transition.
No, I wanted to move on to something else.
I really quickly wanted to bring up the fact of I watched Justice League recently. I know,
it's so lame.
The thing is that it's gotten a bad rap from a lot of people, and so I got an opportunity. I bought the movie and watched it without you because I knew you didn't care.
Well,
but
you're about all of them.
Justice,
all of
yeah,
them.
It's all of them. It's got Wonder Woman, Aquaman. Well, anyway, quickly because I know you want to transition into something else. Is that I watched the movie.
I see what you're saying now.
Wonder Woman was awesome. She is probably the jewel of the whole movie.
The Justice League.
Yeah, Jason, and I can't think of his last name.
Momoa?
Yes, who plays Aquaman was just bad. Plink. And
yeah, of course.
But I thought the Flash was cool. I thought that was pretty cool. And then one of the things that stands out is you have Batman, and it played his theme music from Michael Keaton's Batman theme song, and then you had Superman. It kind of played back onto Christopher Reeve's theme song, and of course and when Wonder Woman comes on, it's a dun 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 dun. It's just a really awesome movie. So I gave the movie a B-. It had some room for improvement, but overall not terribly. It wasn't a great movie, but it's not a bad movie. So if you want to check it out, I would say go ahead and check it out. So on that note, let's move on to something else because Surlana's tired of comic books.
Of mediocre things to watch. You and I are fans of Star Trek. You of the whole thing. Me of just from TNG onward. And the always problematic Star Trek Voyager. There's many things I like about it, but my gosh, it has its weak episodes. And one of these is called Threshold. The premise is pretty laughable, and the whole thing is pretty silly, but I will still go back and watch this because I don't know why. So, what has happened here is this is an episode where Tom Paris is trying to break the warp 10 barrier, and then he starts rapidly evolving into some weird amphibian creature, and then he kidnaps Janeway, and it happens to her, and they go mate on some planet as these weird lizard creatures. So, according to Space.com, there's an anonymous person going by the name of BioTrekkie. He wanted to show the world how easy it is to get a completely phony story into a well-known scientific journal if you shell out the right amount of money. Even one that's peer-reviewed like this. So the paper was named Rapid Genetic and Developmental Morphological Change Following Extreme Celerity.
Okay.
It's retelling the whole famous episode, and of course it's worded differently, worded scientifically.
Right.
He's different wording. He left in fake science terms like warp speed and obvious clues of character names in hopes somebody would call his bluff, but no one did, because apparently if you're that deep in nerd into research, you don't have time to see Star Trek. So it got accepted by no less than 4 different journals, published in one of them, the American Research Journal of Biosciences. Some journals say as long as you pay a fee, you get in. So much for standards and peer review. Mm-hmm. So the American Research Journal has now, of course, they've pulled the paper from the website since they got it exposed. But it just goes to show it's kind of easy and hilarious to get by. It is a strange, silly episode, but I'll always go back and watch it because I'm like that, you know. Yes.
Janeway and Paris getting it on.
Yes, and he was kind of like, sorry I jumped your bones as a weird lizard creature and made you pregnant and got all these kids. And she's like, hey, no worries, it happens.
Well, speaking of sci-fi, you know, I have been doing a lot of movie watching lately, and I remembered a movie that I had seen not too long ago it kind of cracks me up because anyway, the movie's called Extraterrestrial. This movie had me on the edge of my seat. The aliens look like the tall grays. This movie is one of those movies that Surlana and I, you know, I'll sit with Surlana and we'll watch trailers a lot. And as we're going through all these trailers, it's like, you're not going to watch that, you know. So, and then I guess while she was doing something else at some point.
No, I said I forbid you to watch that. Not so, like, oh, you won't watch that.
Well, I showed you, didn't I? I ended up watching it without you.
And we slept with a blue light on for 2 nights, which I was pissed about. Because I need it dark.
You know, our room is usually pretty dark, but anyway,
unless you got your cell phone flipped over and it's lighting up the entire room.
So long, you know, back to what I was going to say is that if you want to get a roller coaster ride, it's not one of these perfect movies, but it is definitely a roller coaster ride to say the least. You should check out Extraterrestrial. It's on Prime Video right now on Amazon. You should definitely take a look at it. So, what were you going to say?
Well, you and I have, you know, in efforts to have quality time with you, we have started watching.
It's like you have a contract that says, in this contract, you make me sound like I'm Sheldon Cooper or something like this. Yeah,
that contract they have, like, we're required to spend every 3rd Tuesday under a full moon together. Well, you like it when we start a TV show together so we can have a series of
so
things
we can
to watch.
Bond and talk about stuff, yes.
Well, you and I have started watching the reboot or next season of Queer Eye on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this started out as Queer Eye for the straight guy, and now they've shortened it to Queer Eye because we all know what it is now. And the crazy thing about it is now we're addicted.
Well, it's
we're so hooked into it.
It's a good show.
It's so emotional. Everybody cries. The straight guy, the gay guys, the families. It's just, and they're in Atlanta, so they've come up.
Has the whole show been based in Atlanta?
Yeah, the whole season's in Atlanta, okay. And they have made over rednecks, cops, other gay men, and it's just been absolutely hilarious. Not in a derogatory way. It's just been what's the crazy part it's a lot of it is very joyful.
Yes.
It has such a positive, joyful feeling to it.
I think that's why I like it, is because it's positive. Just like when I was talking to you about Parks and Recreation being a positive show, This show, it extrudes positivity.
Well, this one person writing this article said the sheer amount of love and affection on display is intoxicating. And you kind of got that from what I remember the first series, but those guys were older, and they're definitely older now. And these guys they look young. They look like they're in their late 20s, maybe 30s, and a lot of them are in legally marriage. They're legally married, some of them, and some of them have kids, and so they've got a whole different perspective they're coming from versus the 2003 version where it was all still, their relationships were illegal. You didn't have a marriage. It was just, it's a really interesting how far we've come between the two shows. So, yeah, we're only like, 4 or 5 episodes. We only let ourselves do one a night because they're so emotional.
It's so easy to binge watch.
Yeah, so we don't want to get too far.
And I think initially Surlana agreed, like, hey, let's just watch one show at a time. And then, of course, there was one night we saw 2 episodes. And I was like,
accident.
You're breaking the rules here. But anyway, it's a great show. And I like the fact that, it's always nice to watch something that's positive and uplifting. And this show is definitely positive and uplifting. And so,
I wish they were my friends. I wish I had friends like that.
You don't want friends.
Well, I mean, I don't want them in my house, no. I mean, but I wish I had a place I could go. I could occasionally encounter them, Let's put it that way.
Well, I did. You did mention while we were watching the show that you were like, "Oh, I just want to hug them," and
I do. I want to give them powerful hugs.
But anyway, great show, and definitely worth the watch. And so, what else you got over there, Surlana?
Last thing I have for you.
Yeah, what's the last thing?
You can now track Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster with an app.
Really? There's an app for that?
There's an app for that. So, since Elon Musk launched his famous red Tesla Roadster into space, cameras on the car have live streamed the journey. I didn't know about this, giving us some unforgettable shots of Earth before going black. So I'm going to have to go back and look for this. It's called whereisroadster.com. And it's over 1.8 million miles from Earth, which uses data from NASA to get that. So first car was supposed to go into orbit of Mars, but it actually overshot it, going slightly beyond the red planet, but not so far out as the asteroid belt. So I don't know if that was a little miscalculation. But the guy who made the app has my same last name. So I think it's funny that he did this. I mean, God knows we don't need more crap out in space, but I think it's awesome that he did this.
Yeah,
put the car in space.
Well, I think it's like I've said before in previous episodes that this is a great advertising coup for him and putting his product out there. He's proving that his rockets can get stuff out there, and then you've got the Tesla angle that
and you can follow the car as it makes its path around our little neighborhood. It's going to end in 2020. You can follow the car's path around the sun from today to almost the end of 2020, year 2020, and check when the Roadster will be getting particularly close to Mars or Earth. So is it going to do an orbit?
An orbit, yes.
So the close passes to our planet will occur in 2091. I'll be long dead by then. That'd be a good time for space enthusiasts to go retrieve the Roadster so it could go to a museum. So, I don't know. The whole thing is kind of cool and fun. I don't know what you think about it.
No, I think it's cool.
As long as he used his own money, that's cool.
It kind of reminds me of a thing I use for Spaceboy music. Space. It takes you there. And so the rocket takes his car into space, and it's taking him out there into the universe. So pretty cool stuff there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as Surlana continues to chomp down on,
I'm sorry, I got hungry.
She couldn't wait for a few minutes or a few seconds that we're going to go to break. We might as well, just cheat our audience right now. Okay, audience, forget listening to Surlana. We're going to go ahead and take our break now, so we can get into talking. So by the time we come back for break, hopefully she's eating all her chips over there. So don't touch that dial.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
All right, we're fresh back from arguing about dinners for next week.
Among other things, there was something you also brought up. I can't remember, but it's not important because we're going to move on.
It's not relevant.
So tonight is an interesting subject matter.
Yes, indeed.
We're going to be talking about the ladies that were codebreakers for World War II. And
they kept this secret for decades.
Now, you were inspired by the book written by...
I'm going to guess it's Liza Mundy, or it could be Liza. It's Liza. I'm going to say it's Liza Mundy. American Code Girls, American Women Code Breakers of World War II, which I got on Amazon. You're not going to read that little blurb?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, people. You could go ahead and read it, or do you not have it in front of you? Or
I can get it in front of me. I mean... It gives me 1 second.
Well, basically the book is description says that it recruited by the U.S. Army and Navy for small towns and elite colleges, more than 10,000 women served as codebreakers during World War II. While their brothers and boyfriends took up arms, these women moved to Washington and learned the meticulous work of code breaking. Their efforts shortened the war, saved countless lives, and gave them access to careers previously denied to them because they were women.
Amen.
A strict vow of secrecy nearly erased their efforts from history. Now, through dazzling research and interviews with the surviving code girls, best-selling author Liza Mundy brings to life this riveting and vital story of American courage, service, and scientific accomplishment.
We cannot understate or overstress their contributions to our success, America's success in World War II. Now, I have not read this book cover to cover. It's a big book. My life is jam-packed with activities. So I started having to jump around. I also listened to an hour-long talk that the author gave. It's on YouTube. Excuse me. So I'm going to tell you everything I've learned. And my gosh, did I not know any of this? I didn't know they existed because they had such a cone of silence around this. And it was probably good for that time period to be so secretive, but because of the, falling into the wrong hands and revealing too much. But
loose lips sink ships.
Right, exactly. It was true.
Yeah, I mean, just
that part was true. But now we've come away from it. I don't know how many years have passed. So it's time for their story to be heard. And from every little bit of research I was trying to do before I started reading, this author seems to have cornered the subject matter on it. Because once her husband worked in the National Archive, and she worked with the NSA to find out who these women were. And she says they're a precious resource because they're in their 90s, so they're dying off. She had to try to go find them and talk to them. And even when she did talk to them, there were a few of these ladies who were worried they were still going to get in trouble with the government.
Mm-hmm.
So that's loyalty, or being, just...
just a quick sidebar on that. It reminded me of the stories we hear from Roswell and how people were threatened for security reasons to remain silent. Even after all these years, they were... those survivors of that were afraid to come forward.
Well, this is a little bit different. This is government secrets. True. That is weirdness.
Still, it's still the government. They trying to put a restraint on what could be said and what can be said.
Yeah, they threaten those people. I don't think these women were.
But anyway, I don't want
threatened.
to. I don't want to lower the accomplishments that these women did, and so let's go from there, Surlana.
Well, I learned a lot just in the little bit I've been able to read in this book. And what I like about this book is it goes from telling you the factual accounts into more of a almost kind of like a biopic. Like, here's the day in the life of this woman. Here's her journey. She went from, being this small town, underpaid, overworked teacher to this vital asset of code breakers, so we'll follow the journey of a few of these women here tonight. And I've learned a lot about the culture of the time. Now, growing up, I know about all the sacrifices American citizens made for both wars, especially in World War II. The things you had to give up, the things people volunteered to give up. And it wasn't just scrap metal. But, resources of almost every kind were scarce. They talked about people did not go on long journeys, like get in a car and go see grandma, because if it was too far away, you don't waste gas. You just do what you had to do, and that's it. Try to think about doing stuff like that now. It just couldn't be done.
Well, everybody knew what the stakes were, and
they were all on board with it too. So, and then I also found out, no surprise to me, this is, 1930s, 1940s, and the attitude and preconceptions and notions about women were still in place since the dawn of mankind, of humankind, where women are supposed to get married and crank out youngins, and that's your entire purpose in life. And this was still very much in place, very much in place. So sexism has been a long, hard road. And I learned that even there was so much efforts going on behind the scenes to get intelligence. And the first thing that struck me that I didn't really know is so much went on, but they did not see Pearl Harbor coming. Mm-hmm. Even with all the code breaking, and for some reason, this just slipped by everybody. And I didn't realize this Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I didn't realize how much stuff we had there at that time. We had military assets, ships, planes.
Well, it's a naval base.
Yeah, personnel. And nearly half the men who were stationed there died on a ship, the Arizona. And we didn't see it coming.
Yeah, my uncle served during that time and was at Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
Yeah, on my mother's side, my grandma's brother. I had to think about it, but he was in the Navy, and he was there at Pearl Harbor.
I assume I must have had family members. If I do, I was never told, because there's a lot of family on my dad's side that I wouldn't know them if I passed them on the street, So if there's any on my mother's side, somebody would have to tell me. Again, not that familiar with that family history, but I could find out. So anyway, that I did not know. In fact, what I read and heard was when the planes came over, they thought they were our guys. Mm-hmm. Like there was something wrong with the plane or their pilot, and they were like, get their number, I'm going to report that pilot. And then they started diving down, and they realized, oh, this is an attack. It's like they didn't believe it at first, that it was an attack. So,
yeah, it was kind of hard to believe. The thinking was that really somebody's attacking us. It's just I think they were just blown away by the fact that we could be under attack like that.
Well, they also pointed out during that time how disorganized the entire military seemed at the time of the attack. Mm-hmm. There was no intelligence agency for this. There was no network of spies really established yet. So the first thing they said, we need to get some people together and start cracking these codes on these enemy messages in their systems. So somebody got their blank together and says, let's send out some secret letters. And so in November of 1941, a young woman, Ann White, was a senior at Wellesley College. She was a German major. So there was this professor there at the college. She was a professor of astronomy, had a letter sent to her asking for a private interview in the college's observatory. Now, the letter was from Helen Dodson, and it asked Anne only 2 questions. This is significant because this was sent out to many, 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 many women, like thousands. 2 questions. Do you like crossword puzzles? And are you engaged to be married? The correct answer is yes and no. Again, the prevailing belief, if you're engaged to be married, your loyalty is to your husband. You're going to follow him everywhere, and then you're going to crank out babies. And you can't possibly be married, have children, and have a job at the same time. That's just what the thoughts were of the time. And, well, since the dawn of time, basically. All the way to 1940, whatever. Or into 1950, let's say, 1950s. So, other college attendees also received this mysterious summons from Dodson. Elizabeth Colby, Nan Westcott, Edith UHE, Gloria Bossetti, Blanche Dupuy, B. Norton, Louise Wilde, and these women were math majors, psychology majors, Italian language majors, Spanish majors, history, and of course the obligatory English major, because we all make things better and smarter, don't we? So initially 27 seniors, women who were seniors, were sent this secret invite, and they all liked puzzles, and none of them were engaged to be married. So that was the key. So Anne Barris got a letter during her senior year. She was a history major. She was also the head of the International Relations Club, whatever that is. She had a prestigious internship in Washington, D.C., which is a rare thing for a woman at that time. And after her secret meeting, she set aside all her big plans. Now, more letters were sent to more women in Bryn Mawr, Mount Holyoke, Barnard, and Radcliffe, all, famous established higher education institutions for women. Now, as we said, World War II was a time of great sacrifice to the war effort from civilians. Mm-hmm. The likes I don't think we've ever seen since. I probably ever will. So, it's a time for...
It was really a time where the nation came together.
Yes, it was a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I have a little frog there. Apologize. So, these letters went out, and you've got this atmosphere of gathering supplies, manufacturing, and a lot of volunteering. So, now, you've got the situation in the Atlantic where you've got these German U-boats out there in the waters ready to grab any of our supply ships trying to get to Britain. So that's a big problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while that was going on at Wellesley College, they did their part. You know what they did? This place, so the college is located 20 miles from Boston Harbor. So they doused the lights in the college at night to help hide the ships in the harbor so the lights wouldn't draw your eye to the shore.
Mm-hmm.
So the students would, the female students would find their way around at night on the campus with flashlights. So, of course, during air raids, they always make you turn, that off, turn your lights off. Okay, so, again, this is not the Stone Ages, but it's still a time when, women should be barefoot and pregnant. So, you've got this concept of why take a woman and put her in college? Why bother sending her to higher education? It's a waste of time and money. So, your job's to crank out youngins. And I keep harping on that, but I want you to understand this is a different mindset. It is a different time. But again, when war breaks out, suddenly educated women were needed urgently. Now, what I found out is that if you're an enlisted man in Navy, military, whatever, any desk job is a dead end. You're not going to move up in ranks. You're not going to get your shot at glory. Probably not going to get promotions or monetary, promotions. It's a sort of dead end. And code breaking is a desk job. But what's odd about it is women did get promotions and more money, which is strange because they sort of created this whole job description.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you do have women going on to college and universities. So you do have some educated women. So what you've got is women who worked on German and Japanese naval codes and working on the machines that created these codes. And it was this code breaking from these women that helped clear the Atlantic of German U-boats. What are you smiling at?
No, I'm just enjoying the conversation.
Okay.
I feel like
I can't read chat and look at the same time. I
just feel like I just can't get enough of you during the week, and when it comes together on a Saturday.
Oh, we're talking to each other.
Yes.
Oh, another sad window into our life. Okay, so women broke codes as well as the Enigma machine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we probably all know about the Enigma machine. This is a German machine that was created over there, and what it was is it had these 4 rotors that was in it because It started out as 3, but they suspected we were cracking their code, and we were. So they switched it to 4 rotors. And now the British can't decipher it anymore. So now what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'll get more into this in a minute. What we did is we built 100 machines in Dayton, Ohio. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to that in a minute. Anyway, so these secret meetings these women were brought to with these letters. What were these clandestine meetings about? These students, these women were called to these meetings where they learned that the U.S. Navy wanted them to learn about the field of cryptanalysis. In case you don't know, the prefix CRYPTO, crypto, means secret or hidden. That's always cryptocurrency, cryptids, crypto creatures, hidden. Because you can't find them.
Right.
So they got these letters and they went to these meetings and they said, do not tell another living soul about these meetings or what's said in them. Don't talk about them outside the gathering. So rule number 1 of cryptanalysis, you don't talk about Crypt Club, basically. So these women were offered training in code breaking. Now, they did have to pass some aptitude tests to get there. And if you didn't pass, you didn't get in. Now, if they passed, they would go straight to Washington, D.C. after their graduation. And they would get jobs in the Navy as civilians. And, of course, the secrecy was super strict once they got there. No telling friends, parents, family, husbands, boyfriends, roommates. Do not mention it or it could leak out into any college newspaper. No letters to boyfriends about it. If anyone asks, tell them they're studying communications and the routing of ordinary naval messages. Well, the author of this book, Liza, says they were also said, if you get really questioned, tell them you're doing secretarial work. You're sharpening pencils and refilling inkwells and emptying waste paper baskets. Just anything. And she says that worked for so long, those cover stories, because nobody thought anything a woman did was interesting or important. Again, this is the atmosphere of the culture of the time, right? Mm-hmm. So these ladies got these packets at these meetings. Manila envelopes that had a brief introduction to the history of codes and ciphers, numbered problem sets, strips of papers with letters of the alphabet printed on it. So they're going to start testing them, right? And they had to sit there and solve these every week and turn them in. So it's like a correspondence course at first. Mm-hmm. They were allowed to be there and work in groups of 2 or 3. So the professor, Dodson, she was learning this along with him. In fact, she didn't know that much more than her students. She was only 1 chapter ahead of them in learning code breaking. So these women soon learned things like which letter of the English language occurs with the greatest frequency, which letters travel in pairs like S and T, which ones travel in triplets like EST, ING, IVE, and the good TION.
You know, when I read about that part, you know what it reminded me of? Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Because
and how crappy people are at playing that game.
Well, you know, the game is very similar to, you know, the letter structures, you know, to basically solve these puzzles. You know, they're really basic puzzles if you think about it compared to what these women back then. So it was kind of an off the top of my head, like, you know, this reminds me of Wheel of Fortune and the basic letters, the R, the S, the T, the certain vowels. And
yeah, but you know that's in English. You do recognize it. When I started reading the technical aspects of it, which I'm not going to explain because I don't get it. But
I understand it goes down the rabbit hole from there. But
oh, I mean, my goodness. I didn't even bother to explain it. It's just too... It's so complicated about the transposing letters and using symbols. The Japanese codes. Oh, Lord. So anyway. So these women learned these things. They mastered what... Now, this is a French word, and I don't know how to pronounce it. The visionnaire square, which is a method of disguising letters using a tabular method that dates back to the Renaissance. Mm-hmm. They learned about the Playfair or Wheatstone cipher, which is a manual of symmetric encryption techniques. Feel free to look those up on your own because, this is a huge topic, by the way. You could just talk about just the women and their journeys, the different ones, which I'm kind of focused on, or you could talk about the actual technology, the process of cracking codes, the process of how these machines are built and made. This goes on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to tell you, before we go to break, and we'll keep coming back to her, about Dot Braden. Dot Braden was a school teacher when the war broke out. And she taught at a high school. And not only did she teach at a high school, she taught almost every subject at a high school because when the war broke out, male teachers went to war.
Right.
So that left a hole in some places for teaching. So she had to pick up the slack. I mean, my goodness, she was teaching physics, physical education, Latin. I mean, everything, almost every subject, English, math. So she burned out real quick on teaching.
Well, I imagine so, if she took over the duties of these men.
So, but her income, such as it was helping her family back home because I think she still lived with her mom and 9 siblings. Somehow her mother had heard that there were war recruiters looking for teachers at a hotel. Now, here's what I found out later listening to the author's lecture.
Mm-hmm.
Government, or maybe it was the Navy, but they sent their most attractive male officers to these places, as hotels, to recruit, to get these college women to come to D.C. because this is what they thought about women's brains, by the way. They thought women will see them and go, oh, well, I can come with him and find me an attractive man and get a husband. And they were thinking they would appeal to their hormones. But that wasn't the case. Women actually just wanted jobs and they wanted to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe they wanted to help the country. That's just speculation on my part. But anyway, so Dot told her mom, she says, I am so burned out. I'm going to quit. I cannot do this anymore. Because it was a lot of work and she wasn't getting compensated. So she knew physics and was talented in languages. So the recruiters were very interested in her language skills. So she filled out an application, gave her character references because they did check her out thoroughly. She noted that all her family, that the males, were in the armed services. And she talked about all the clubs she was members of, in school and, in college. And soon enough, a few weeks later, she was in D.C. working as a civilian for the U.S. Army Signal Intelligence Service. And I'll stop right there.
All right. Well, Surlana, that means we are at close to the top of the hour, and so we'll take our break. But some very interesting stuff. And, as we get further down the rabbit hole, we'll learn more about these women. And so don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
I'm from another planet. I'm from another planet. Can you hear me? Answer me. Can you hear me?
the darn fool didn't have his lights on, sir.
Our job is to prevent a possible nationwide panic by keeping the information from the public.
I don't know why these saucers always have to wait till nighttime to put in an appearance.
You know, usually we have a guest on, and during the break, we'll start talking with them, and we commit the biggest infraction on the SBU.
Where the interesting stuff happens during the break.
Interesting stuff. And I was just talking to Surlana about...
So we had to talk to each other.
About the fact that, once Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japan and we declared war on the Japanese, then Russia. Well, I'm getting ahead of me. That might be a future thing. Hopefully that never happens. But Japan, when we got declared war on Japan, Germany then declared war on us. Until that moment, we were helping the British out with supplies, and all that. But they were just getting massacred by these U-boats out there. And,
exactly.
And so, I just wanted to kind of bring that up to the subject. But, what were you going to say after that?
I am by no means a World War I or II expert. Mm-hmm. I know what I was taught in school. I know what I was taught in college. I've seen a few documentaries on my own. Mm-hmm. I like to think I know a little bit more than the average person walking around. I don't know. But I still to this day don't understand what was Japan thinking.
And things,
bringing us into the war like that.
If they
did they think we're a bunch of wimps?
I guess they were wanting their own conquest of, especially the Pacific. All these islands and everything, and I guess those were all on the list of things that they wanted. And, they felt like, okay, well, we need to strike at the United States because if we start...
a show of force?
A show of force,
like,
a dominance, yes. And that was probably the worst thing. I forgot who said that you've awoken...
The sleeping tiger.
The sleeping tiger, and of course, it would be interesting to see if history had been different and Japan hadn't bombed us, because, quite frankly, at the time, the United States was they were a lot of isolationists. Mm-hmm. We did not want to be involved in another war because we had already gone through World War I.
It cost too much,
and the cost was not
to the economy, to American lives.
Yeah, I mean, to the American psyche in general was like
it's just too much.
We don't want that, because a lot of the America was still in a a rural kind of situation, where life was simple, and they that was like millions of miles to them away, and when they sent their children away, and a lot of them didn't come back, they were like, we did not want to get involved in another war.
War.
But it wasn't until the bombing of Pearl Harbor that it united the nation as a whole, and everybody felt their duty to step up and protect the nation to get out of this isolationist funk, if you will. So, anyway, a little history there.
Okay. Anyway, back to Dot Braden. So, now she's working for the U.S. Army Signal Intelligence Service. She got paid $1,620, double her teaching salary. Now, this is a time when, like I said, again, personal sacrifice, everything was rationed. Especially gas. Nobody took any long trips for no good reason. Like, you didn't go see Grandma unless you absolutely had to.
You had to pay with stamps. Sometimes, you had a ration book. Very,
everyone was saving, volunteering, or just doing without, and not complaining about it
either. Buy
either.
your war bonds and stuff like that, yes.
So she gets there, and Dot doesn't even know what job she's taking, but she recalled on her application form there was some mention of something called cryptography. So she ended up at this place called Arlington Hall. It was this compound, basically, facility that's surrounded by this 12-foot steel perimeter fencing. It used to be a finishing school or something for girls, and from what I I read in the book, sometimes I just hear my voice in my head.
You go through a lot of hearing and reading and yeah.
Well, what I read was they kind of took over this Arlington Hall like it was an enemy, fortress or something, and they bought the land or something, shoot out the girls, and had one guy that had a gun, and the rest of them had sharpened broomsticks, try to get them out of there. I mean, it was sort of weird, and that's they needed the space so bad because they're going to put all the code breaking in here. So anyway, she soon found herself with a huge crowd of other women at this compound, signing a loyalty oath and a secrecy oath. And of course she gets there and didn't realize she had to provide her own living space, and she didn't have the money, so she had to wire money from her mother, who didn't really have money. And she ended up that day, because she didn't have accommodations, so she ended up renting a room in a woman's dormitory, which she absolutely hated. It was a terrible situation. It was because there's so many women there. They had a communal kitchen and a communal bathroom. It's like a dormitory. You had to leave and go down the hall.
Shared.
And it wasn't in the best condition at all. But because there were so many women, they called it Arlington Farms. It was nicknamed 28 Acres of Girls because, men. 24,000 women entered the government service in 1940 alone. And then after that, tens of thousands more. That is a lot of women you never heard about. Never. That's not including the waves, I guess.
And once again,
the wax and the waves.
It's a conversation I've had with you before where when history like this wasn't taught in high school, it's very frustrating because it was
kept secret. This was kept secret.
I know, but still, I was in high school in the 80s. And, what are you doing? You doing a calculation?
Yeah, me too. Late 80s. Yeah.
So
I was thinking, is he telling the truth? Yes, he is. Okay.
The thing is that I feel like I was cheated out of not knowing this history. And even beyond that.
And this is freaking cool.
I mean, it is some really cool stuff. Now,
pardon my pouring a drink here.
As you continue on with your conversation, I'm constantly reminded of the show Mad Men, the early beginning of Mad Men.
50s, huh?
Well, it starts in the 50s.
Yeah.
And
that's post-war.
Yeah, so the thing is that, you were talking about there women in this dormitory kind of situation, and one of the main characters was in this housing where she shared a room with another female worker at I guess where she worked, and so I could see some of the things parallel as far as the culture is concerned, how women were looked upon.
Probably the safest place for them, I guess, was in a dormitory
and at the job in question, women, you were a secretary. You weren't,
or a teacher.
Or a teacher.
That was the most common thing. Now, here's what I learned about this time frame. If you're a teacher, it's kind of a given you're a spinster, or you could be engaged. But the minute you get married, they expect you to resign your teaching job because there's no way you can be married and have a job because you're going to get pregnant. And there's no way a woman can be married and have kids and have a full-time job. It just can't happen. We don't have the capacity to handle it. Thank God times have changed. So anyway, that staggering amount of women means DC was swelling with ladies. They were known as government girls, or G girls for short. So Dot eventually got settled into the dorm where she had to pay in advance, and that's what she had to wait for her mom to wire her some money. Mm-hmm. And her mom was supportive of all this, by the way, which is unusual. There's some other mothers we'll find out, but She got back on board a nondescript bus, takes her back to the compound, and she spent several days in orientation. She was only permitted in certain parts of the building, which that goes on today in government buildings. You don't go wandering around.
Even in some corporate environments,
It's corporate secrets. So she attended these strict lectures about secrecy. She finally found out her purpose in D.C. after all these signing these documents and these orientation and, lectures. She had been hired to break enemy codes. So she worked in this building in a room crammed full of other women, the likes which she had never seen before, and she even went to an all-women's college and she hadn't seen this many women in one place. There were tables, desks, paper, strips of paper, women who seemed to know what they were doing, but no one seemed to be in charge. There were tabulating machines, punch card machines, big machines, machines with nests of cable attached. What Dot didn't realize is she was sitting amongst the world's largest clandestine message center. Here, enemy messages came in via airmail, cable, and teletype that came from Nazi Germany, Japan, Italy, occupied France, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, and even Switzerland, who was supposed to be neutral. Sorry, chip bag. Now, we had our own encrypting coding machines, which means what they had to do was strip out our encryption first before getting to the enemy's encryption. So getting started. Mm-hmm. So she works in this base called Arlington Hall Station, and it had thousands of people working there. Now, some were Army officers, enlisted men, and male civilians. Now, the nice thing is there were some older men there that worked there, and some of them had disabilities that disqualified them from military service, but they still were of good use, so they put them at desk jobs. So that's one good thing our military did. So let's talk about what it took to be a code breaker. What was our government looking for in these ladies? So it's mostly female civilians who went to be cryptographers, cryptanalysis rather. Like Dot, they were all ex-school teachers. Because teachers were well suited for code breaking. Because our government quickly found out that a person's professional background did not preclude them to be a code breaker. So they went through all these applications and testing, giving them, actual things to do to see what their abilities were. Mm-hmm. They found out people who had PhDs couldn't hack it. But yet you'll have somebody who didn't even finish high school were naturals at code breaking. So they didn't read too much into your educational background. In fact, they didn't mention the name, but they said there was this actress who was a gifted code breaker, but she had very little formal education. So, a piece of paper doesn't tell you what your intelligence is. What code breaking required, actually, is numeracy, care, creativity, attention to detail, good memory, ability to hazard a guess. Also, you had to be able to tolerate drudgery and you had to have unlimited energy and optimism because this was grueling work. You also helped if you had good math test scores because that's a sign of a good code breaker, so I could never be a code breaker. They also looked into your hobbies and how creative you were. They like women who like going to the movies worked really well with code breaking or anything they did that's creative. They were also looking for mature, dependable women, not necessarily old, but a certain level of maturity. Clear, bright, young, alert, adaptable, willing to take supervision, willing to not be supervised, which was all suited Dot Braden to a T. And again, I've told you about, unfortunately, married women were not considered because they tend to follow their husbands. What an insane concept, to follow your husband and be loyal. It's a stereotype of the time period that school teachers were usually unmarried women. In fact, during this time, in the 40s, some companies, just businesses, barred hiring married women completely because, you're going to get pregnant and disappear anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Teachers had to resign their jobs when they got married because of the antiquated notion a woman's place is in the home once you've committed to marriage.
Well, I was reading, I don't want to get too far ahead.
That's fine.
I was reading part of the book where when they, I guess they were looking for some of these ladies to go into a certain division, mm-hmm. The guys were saying they can't be good looking, or how did he say it? It was like, because they have to be good looking is what he said. Because once this program ends,
women?
Yeah, once the program ends, then we're gonna let them go, and they're gonna need to find husbands or whatever. So, I mean, that was some of the prejudice, if you will,
sexism.
Sexism. Thank you, appreciate that.
Well, prejudice too.
Yeah, and so I found that fascinating, but there were others. I mean, I guess that led into what you were calling the jackpot situation.
Yeah,
I don't want to get ahead. I'm sure you're going to get to that point, but
no, I like this back and forth. It helps.
Kind of, just like taffy, like saltwater taffy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just.
What's your take on this looking back? I mean, as a man.
I'm glad you brought this up because from my point or from your point of view, looking at me, that I'm a pretty open kind of guy when it comes to the subject matter. I believe that women should be equal and be able to do whatever they want to do. And
that's why I married him. But didn't take his name.
So anyway, that's another show altogether. Don't get me started. And I don't want to have to. So, but as far as my perspective is concerned, is that it's very frustrating to look back then because, there are women that clearly were way smarter than most men during this time period.
And I'll make a statement about that later, about what a man said about these women later on.
And I still feel I've had female supervisors, some good, some that I wished I had never gone to work with, and but that can be said the same for male counterpoints.
I've had only one horrible male supervisor, mm-hmm. but the rest of all been female, and that's been a mixed bag because usually they're really over the top, intimidating, aggressive, or they're really like motherly, and I've had all kinds, but I've never had a problem with a male supervisor, other than that one person, and you know who I'm talking about. So you over there, and I'm not going to say where. I'm not going to say who.
I'm just smiling because of.
And you agree with me too, right?
One day I was sitting in your office, and this person came around the corner like he was about to tell you something, and in a. I guess a man kind of way, and
he's gonna mansplain it to me.
And I guess he changed his tune once he saw me sit.
Would they call you a resting bitch face?
But I think you pretty much know, and our audience knows where I stand as far as women can do whatever the heck they want to do. In fact, when I was, I guess when I was living with my sister Stacy. And Bailey was.
Where is Stacy tonight?
She probably forgot the show was going on, but she's
outliving her life.
Yeah, at Walmart. So, but when Bailey was young, her daughter, my niece, I lived with her, and Uncle Jim, wanted to make sure that she grew up that she could do whatever she wanted to do. And never let somebody always ask the question why. Why is things this way? Why question the universe with boldness is what I wanted her to know. And that she could do whatever she wanted to do when she grew up. And and she is very successful. In fact, she makes more money than Uncle Jim does, but I'm not jealous. I'm very proud of her, and she is married to a wonderful husband. And, you know, my expectations of my niece is what I want for any woman that grows up.
Well, the salary I make now, because just times are different in inflation and cost of living, but the salary I'm making now took my dad 40 years to get to, working for the state. It took me 10.
I mean, I should say
he retired making more than I'm making now, but it's not that much more. So, well, I don't know. Good for me? I don't know.
He didn't get any money, like in a like a pie, and, you know, kickback money for working on the roads or anything like that?
No, he didn't have mafia ties, babe.
No, I mean, there was not necessarily mafia. I'm talking about...
Just because he works with concrete doesn't mean he was burying people in concrete shoes.
No, I was talking about the good old boy mentality down here in the South.
No.
And, hey,
you work for the state.
My wife made this wonderful apple pie, and there's a special something in there with an envelope from me, and if you put this road through my neighborhood...
You work in this country, if you work for a state, you're pretty much working for the most broke entity you could possibly work for.
I mean, come on. Louisiana, Huey Long, and
broke.
And corruption. And
they went
now,
30 years without a raise.
I'm not saying that my father-in-law is crooked or anything. He is an angel. He is wonderful. And
about to get punched in the face.
And I love him to death. I'm just making fun of certain stereotypes that have come out of Louisiana, and it always gets her in an uproar. But, you know, how about we get back on the subject?
Yeah, that'd be great. So, like I said, school teachers were perfect code breakers because they were usually unmarried, childless, well-educated, used to hard work, being a teacher, mature, but youthful. Now, the War Department did do a complete background check on everyone, especially Dot, looking at police records. They even went to talk to her town officials to see what they had to say about her. They went to the dean of her school where she taught to see what the dean had to say. And she received a good character, and they were all loyal to her. So, you know, she was in. So, the first thing she started working on was just sorting messages. And even that was difficult work, but she was qualified for it. She noted in this book, the author noted that Dot said women would break down into tears on how difficult the work was. But for some reason, Dot soon began to recognize number patterns in the things she was looking at. She didn't find the work to be easy, but she still liked it, and she moved on to the next level. She sat through lectures about codes used by the Japanese army. She did get a little paranoid for a while due to the constant emphasis on security and secrecy. She was worried that she might accidentally take a piece of paper from work home with her from the office or say something. So she constantly monitored herself. She was on high alert. So I think she was paranoid is what they were saying.
Well, I can imagine so. I mean, important information. I mean, she's lucky to be where she's at. But, I mean, let me rephrase that. She apparently has the knowledge to be where she's at, but in order to get there, it was just like kind of winning a lottery because not every woman was picked for this, and so it was just a dream come true because of the way most women were treated during that time period.
So, excuse me. Yeah, again, it was difficult work. She got a little paranoid, but soon she got assigned to one of the most urgent missions ever undertaken at that facility. Breaking codes that were used to direct merchant Japanese ships that were moving around the Pacific Islands. Specifically, the ships that were bringing vital supplies to Japanese troops. And I'll get more into that in a minute. So she would crack messages that controlled and told the movements of these ships. So in a way, Dot Braden was sinking enemy ships, Japanese ships. So what all these women these women tell their friends and families actually did for a living? Well, as I said before, they're in top secret compounds breaking codes, so they told their friends and family, oh, they're secretaries, they're emptying waste baskets, they're filling inkwells, they're sharpening pencils. And again, people believed it because, well, you're a woman, you couldn't possibly be doing anything interesting or important. So it was easy to keep the secret, and they kept it secret decades after the war. Now, I was listening to the author of this book, Liza, we'll call her, or Liza. She says that when she was writing this book, she found out, as with every aspect of life and jobs, no matter what your job title, what it is you do, there's a huge rivalry always going on. Now, one rivalry was happening between our Army and our Navy in regards to code breaking. They were kind of trying to outdo each other, but that's only to our mutual benefit, So they would go out quietly and recruit from these barefoot rural women to become code breakers, as I said to you before, by sending these handsome young officers to entice them. Hey, come look at these good-looking men, get you a husband, crack some codes. So they can entice these women to come to cryptanalysis by letting them think they can meet their future husbands. Now, this was not the case for Dot Braden. She actually wanted this job. She wanted to go to D.C., didn't care what the job was. She left her home to avoid an engagement. She had a boyfriend that was pressing her to get married, and she's like, I don't think I want to do that.
Well, those gentlemen callers when they're ready to get married.
So she just wanted to leave, and this was the great opportunity for her to just leave. She never told her family what she did for most of her life. She went on to get married and have kids and did not tell them what she did during the war. Never. Until the author went to interview her and verify her employment. That's when the family all found out.
Well, once again, it was something they felt like, well, I've been sworn to secrecy. A lot of the people during that time that were under wraps, didn't want to say anything. I mean, because of their love of country and their commitment to it.
Well, on those secrecy things, they took an oath and they kept it.
Mm-hmm.
They signed documents, and Dot, I think she was interviewing Dot, and she's like, well, is the NSA going to come after me for this? She said, well, given your age, if they do come arrest you, you're going to be in a really nice facility and you won't be there very long. I'm like, dang, girl. Anyway, because of the work she was doing, basically Dot was sinking ships in a matter of weeks of being employed there by cracking codes.
Mm-hmm.
She also, this is another aspect, is some of these women who did this, our government required these ladies to also correspond with enlisted men, like pen pals, to help keep the morale of our men up. Pretty odd. It's like, okay, today you're going to crack codes, now you need to write a letter to Major blah, 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 because he's feeling down.
Okay.
So she did that. Some women were writing 3 to 12 men at a time, just to, like, pen pal stuff. I don't know what they were saying, but she met her future husband this way. Okay, now, prior to World War II, what did America do about code breaking? Lest you think a bunch of men had been sitting around breaking codes before all this, you would be wrong. It also started with a small and brilliant group of women or dissatisfied school teachers looking for a way to use their intellect and talents. They were mentored by men who supported their goals and respected their minds. A little tiny majority of men, minority. Some of these forward-thinking men did exist at the time. Now, do we need to take a break?
Yeah, we're
Sure.
kind of...
That's a good breaking
a good stopping point. Surlana, this is quite an interesting subject matter because it's revealing history that we've not been taught before, and when we get to learn something new, it's always fascinating. And you always bring your A game, doesn't she, Space Cadets? You can chime in the chat room and let her know as we take our break, so don't go anywhere.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Hey, this is the time when I remind all the Space Cadets that, yes, if you go to spaceboymusic.com, the music is free. That's right, all the music is free at spaceboymusic.com for non-commercial use. So go there, download all the music. Hey, and if you got a friend, you can share it with them and let them know that you got it at spaceboymusic.com. Most of all, make sure to play it loud and share it with a friend and tell them where you got it. And tell them to tune in the Spaceboy universe, because it's your duty as a space cadet to make them listen to the coolest show on Earth, or for the universe for that matter. And with that said, we're back, Surlana.
And if anybody has any good casserole recipes, could you tell that to me in chat or social media? Not tuna casserole and something low on vegetables.
You know, I'm
trying to get my menu for the week here. So
the thing is that I love tuna casserole, tuna mac casserole. My grandmother used to make that.
I'm sure
delicious.
Your next wife is going to make the best tuna
macaroni,
casserole.
Carrots, the little cube carrots, and some peas, and it was delicious.
Your next wife is just going to be so awesome. She's going to make you meatloaf and tuna casserole, and as soon as I die soon, it'll be fine. Anyway, okay, I need to say hi to some people. Excuse me.
Anyway, and don't recommend any kind of Mexican dishes because,
Please recommend all the Tex-Mex you can. because I want to make him miserable for a week. So anyway, so where were we? We're talking about Dot Braden. We're on her journey.
Polka.
Now, something I learned in this book, the little bit I could read, is that when you have this code breaking job, right? This field of code breaking, it seemed to work off this principle called the jackpot effect. Now, this is a term that in a science field, let's say you've got, let's say a male scientist hires a woman in a lab early in the development of a certain field, like code breaking. Then in turn, this woman hires other talented women that she knows, and then the field ends up with this high number of qualified, talented, smart women. That's what happened in this field of cryptanalysis. Some women would hire, and then they would go find more women, and then they would bring in more women, and they tell two friends, and then they tell two friends. So surprisingly, cryptanalysis was not a sought-after job by career military men. As I said before, if you wanted to advance and move up or see action, you don't get a desk job, and the cryptanalysis is a dead-end desk job for a career military man. So women filled in all these gaps for these desk jobs. So this is just like in the workforce too. But what's interesting is that these women did advance, and I'll tell you more about that in a bit. So let's talk about Elizabeth Smith, because she's significant. Elizabeth Smith was a Midwesterner who wanted to get out beyond her own little small town world. She was the youngest of 9 children, growing up in Indiana with a Quaker father. So sounds kind of repressive right there. So she made her own efforts to get into college. She had to borrow money from her father, who charged her 6% interest on it because he didn't think she needed to go to college. So she did, and she studied Latin, Greek, and German. She ended up teaching, and she served as a principal in a country school because that's the only job she could get. Now, she got a job with a man who was trying to prove that Francis Bacon was the real author of Shakespeare's work. And it's kind of weird how this evolves.
Bacon.
So Francis Bacon posited some code ideas or cryptanalysis. He said that any letter can be recreated using A and B. And it was through researching Francis Bacon and his crazy ideas that Elizabeth soon saw that the theory that he wrote Shakespeare's plays was cuckoo nutty, and instead was drawn into the world of codes and ciphers. Now, her research partner was named William Friedman, and she ended up marrying him. And they continued together to study cryptanalysis on their own. In fact, they became a powerhouse of cryptanalysis knowledge. So, they kind of treated it at first like a parlor game, breaking codes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so good at it, they even got freelance work in decrypting correspondence. They built their own cipher department with 30 employees, scientists, language experts, and translators and stenographers. Like I said, they became a power couple of code breaking. So between World War I and II, Elizabeth worked on cracking codes used for rum running. Now, this is really interesting. So during Prohibition, alcohol manufacturing and transporting were outlawed, but not the consumption of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you could drink if you could find it. So contraband alcohol was lucrative as any modern day drug cartel. As lucrative as cocaine is right now, that's how good it was for contraband alcohol back in the day. So her job was to decipher rum runner messages. And this goes all the way back to England, back in the 1800s and further back, where they had a contraband on French alcohol beverages. They would run stuff to England illegally because the French has some good alcohol, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like rum and stuff like that. So When it all became legal again to drink and manufacture, Elizabeth worked on other cases involving organized crime because she's kind of good at this. But she too ran into sexism that was typical at the time. Now, another woman called Agnes Meyer enlisted in the Navy at age 28. She went on to become the first female chief yeoman. She was soon transferred to the Navy Code and Signal section. And she got her start making codes, not breaking them. She was even rehired later as a civilian because she was that good. They needed her back. Now, Agnes's job was to test the so-called foolproof enciphering machines that nut jobs were marketing. So they called these nut machines because these nut jobs were trying to sell them these machines. So she would get these machines that could make ciphers and test them. Now, machines make ciphers or codes better than people because there's no mistakes, and we make mistakes.
It is whatever you put into it is what you get out.
So this is where we get encryption in its earliest form,
which comes with the technology and all that traces its roots back to that time.
And people that broke encryption would later be called hackers. So these gals were our first hackers.
Cool.
Agnes did this. She hacked these nut job machines and devices that these crazy inventors were peddling to the U.S. Navy by uncovering their weaknesses and flaws. So she tests them out and say, well, this is no good because of this, that, and the other. So it turns out Agnes and Elizabeth had a rivalry. Again, like every other aspect in life, you can't take the humanity out of it and just do your job. So Elizabeth thought Agnes, because Agnes was single, was too ambitious and lacked loyalty to public service because Agnes wanted to advance. She wanted to earn more money. She wanted recognition. That's crazy. See, Elizabeth was more like, even though she was brilliant, legitimately the equal of her husband, she had this sort of backseat mentality that, oh, my husband's awesome. Oh, my husband's great. Oh, no, I'm not all that, you know. So, I mean, so which lady is messed up in the head? I don't know. You make your decision there. So they had this little rivalry going. So Elizabeth was more loyal to the cause, maybe. And she always talked up her husband's skills over her own. Plus, William Friedman, by the way, did I mention that was William Friedman was her husband? Elizabeth's husband, William, got paid 3 times more than her and Agnes. Even though they were fully his equal in their skill. So, turns out this group of people who understood code and ciphers was a very small, interdependent, claustrophobic, and highly jealous group of each other. So, like every other esoteric group on Earth, you know, once you bring people together, there's going to be problems, right? So, Agnes said, any man-made code can be broken by a woman. Not sure what she means by that, but good on you, sister. Agnes was fluent in Japanese ship names and how they disguised their fleet codes. Her contribution to code breaking was spectacular and had a real-world impact. She managed to break the Japanese code. They had this new way of coding called additive coding. It was tough. So she managed to break it when they had this breakthrough. And it's noted in the book that it's in large part thanks to Agnes and Elizabeth's work that we didn't go into World War II as blindly as we could have after Pearl Harbor. So if it wasn't for code breakers, we'd probably been a lot worse off. We might have even lost. Okay, back to Elizabeth's husband, William. For all that, you know, you may think that Elizabeth talked him up and, you know, you're like, oh, you know, he did hire other women, mostly because they were available, but he didn't think less of women, you know, like the prevailing beliefs at the time. So he liked working with intelligent women, so kudos to William Friedman. One such hire he did was a woman called Wilma Berryman. Now, Wilma had heard of Elizabeth previously. and admired her. So Wilma taught high school math. Of course, you've got this a teacher. She's good with math. She heard about the correspondence course that lets you learn how to break codes as a hobby. So she did it. She taught herself through the years through this correspondence course, and eventually all her results from this course got back to Friedman, and he hired her and was giving her the task of cracking the fascist government of Italy in their messages, and Wilma loved it. Another significant name in code breaking is Genevieve Grotjen. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right, but that's what it looks like. So Genevieve was a junior cryptanalyst. When she started out, she was making $2,000 a year in 1939. She graduated with high honors, won academic awards and scholarships, but she could not find a job anywhere because she wanted to teach math at a university, and nobody wanted to hire a female professor. So go fig. So instead, to get a job, she took a clerk job at the Railroad Retirement Board, and she's happy enough with it. So she really did want to advance her career. So while she was at the retirement board, she took this exam so she could move up. That's when she got Friedman's attention. Genevieve was not social. She was shy and introverted. The book describes her like she's dressed prudishly, but she lived for numbers, and it was oblivious to any of these inter-office rivalries that went on around her. So they ended up giving Genevieve the pressing problem of Japan's cipher system that the Japanese diplomats were using around the world. Now, this is significant. These Japanese diplomats used machines to generate ciphers, and Genevieve's team was given the near impossible task of trying to reconstruct the machines without ever having seen one. No blueprints, no drawings. They're just trying to make it up, from scratch. Of course, Friedman was also dealing with nut job machines that were getting peddled to the government, and they're trying to be like, okay, this is no good, this is no good. Because people were out there selling cipher machines, and then they would say, buy my machine, U.S. Navy, U.S. military, or we'll go sell it to the enemy. So every now and then, they would get a really good cipher machine, and they found one, or they heard about one that was called Enigma. I'm sure we've all heard about Enigma at this point. Enigma was an encoding machine that started out as a tool for German bankers made by Germans, but quickly was overtaken and controlled by Nazis. And it was commercially available, this machine, until Hitler said, no, get that off the market. We're going to start using it for codes. And so they would have the only machine that couldn't leak out and get replicated. Mm-hmm. The actual Enigma machine was not much bigger than a typewriter of that time, so this means it was portable, it was battery powered, you could lug it around during the war. The machine only had one job, to change each letter of a message to a different letter. Okay, so the Japanese heard about this and they were doing the same thing, but no one knew how the Japanese ones worked. So what happened was this Japanese baron or rich guy or some dude got a hold of an Enigma machine, and he brought it back, and they just studied it. They wanted to see how it worked, and they wanted to make their own that was better and different. Mm-hmm. Now, Japan's wasn't mobile. It was attached to an electrical cord. So, but what they were using it for was to encode messages for Japanese diplomats to, back and forth. So they could run, but their machine could encipher and decipher. It had two modes. Mm-hmm. So of course they were discussing war plans, these diplomats, and you see how important it was to crack these codes. Now, they started out with this one machine, and Japanese did, and we found out about it. So we nicknamed it Red. The Japanese first cipher machine, we just called it Red. Well, the Japanese began to suspect we knew about it and how it worked. So they started perfecting it. And they had a new one called Purple. Or we called it Purple.
Right.
That's the key here. Now, as the book points out, these ciphers generated by machines are hell to break. But once you do, you're in. In fact, and this is what Genevieve did, in fact, it was so grueling, arduous, difficult, and I guess eventually demoralizing that it took a toll on Friedman, and he had to be hospitalized for exhaustion, and then he had a nervous breakdown over all this because it took like 18 months or something. Now, he never discussed his problems or his hardship with his own wife, which is strange. But when Genevieve started to break into this code, it provided, quote, the most important source of strategically valuable long-term intelligence on our enemies. So 7 months later, after Genevieve's breakthrough with this purple, she got a $300 raise and a promotion to principal cryptographic clerk, and Friedman's team began to expand. Now, why didn't we see Pearl Harbor coming? Because the Japanese diplomats weren't told about it, and they weren't talking about it, so we didn't find it in the code.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting because leading up to the bombing, there was this, the diplomats at that time were in a kind of an interesting situation of not being able to say anything until after all that had happened.
So I guess the bombing of Pearl Harbor was like the most top secret thing they kept to themselves over there, whereas they were blabbing everything else in these codes. So, as I said, the machine that had the biggest secrets was the purple machine, or we gave it that nickname, it's a purple machine. And it said, a Japanese man bought the Enigma commercially and brought it to Japan, and purple was called the 97 alphabetical typewriter, and of course we gave it that name, the Japanese purple cipher. Before we go to break, let me read you this quote about it.
Okay.
Maybe give you some more insight.
Yeah, you got a little time here.
The purple machine was made up of 2 typewriters as well as an electrical rotor system with 25-character alphabetic switchboard. Like the Enigma machine, the first typewriter was the method in which plain text or unencrypted messages could be manually input. The typewriter was built to be compatible with English, Romaji, Roman, and adding a level of mystery through language choice. Like the Enigma machine, the purple machine would not only have an unknown method of encryption, but also a secret key that was changed on a daily basis. That's important. Mm-hmm. This meant that even if a purple machine was stolen, it's useless without the key of the day. And that's what gave them headaches and fits, was the key. And they had to end up making their own machines to replicate it so they could start trying to... They replicated these machines to see how it works so they could start predicting and learning how to crack it. So, something to note, when I did a separate search for the purple cipher, or the purple machine, and everything I had read about it, no women's names were mentioned. It's all William Friedman and his team and this guy and that guy, and I'm like, yeah. But when they finally cracked into the codes from the purple machine, it had a huge impact on the Battle of Midway. And we did this by building replicas of it. And this is what they were doing in Dayton, Ohio, creating kind of almost like a factory line of knockoff purple machines and the machines to check the daily key. So there's 2 separate things. So they set up this whole base up there of waves. That's the women in, is that the Navy?
Well, women's auxiliary.
You've got wax and waves.
Right.
This was, so. Yeah. Anyway, so they sent these waves up there to learn to build these machines. And I'm telling you, these women were putting things together with their hands and building these things and learning how to encode them and decode them and, So that's what's going on in Dayton, Ohio, creating purple machines. So they sent this brilliant mathematician to oversee the operation, Louise Pearsall. And I guess they did whatever they had to do for however long it took. And they said, okay, load up these machines, get them on a train. You get on the train, these, waves, and go back to D.C. with them. Okay, so here's another insight into the culture of the time. I'm telling you about, if you get married, you got to quit. If you get pregnant, you got to quit. If you're pregnant, you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, blah. Well, the women who were working in Dayton, Ohio, kind of got a bad reputation. Because if you're pregnant, you're out, or if you're pregnant, you can't get in. Well, some of these girls wanted in, and they were pregnant, and they self-aborted. So, word of that got around. So when Louise got on the train to go back to D.C. with her other fellow waves with these machines, they had to go through a processing center where, the enlisted men just went back to their jobs, but the women had to go to this facility and be processed, whatever that means. And the reason they did that is because they came from a place that had this bad reputation. They thought all these women are up to no good. These women are loose. And what they would do, they would kick these women out, and they put on their records that they had to boot them out because they had Condition X. Condition X is being pregnant. And they did not ever state, like, we kicked her out because she's pregnant. We kicked her out because she had an abortion. They said, oh, well, she was loitering, or she did that. They gave them other things, like, oh, she was being, disrespectful or something. So they made up things to kick them out under. They never said the truth. The processing center's commander, Meter, had to eject a number of waves for these perceived misbehaviors, but it was actually because of abortions. You can't be in the military and be pregnant. So that's why when Louise got off the train and they said they were from Dayton, the enlisted men at the processing center were jeering at him like, oh, we know about you Dayton girls, y'all loose women getting abortions. And they made these mathematicians and women working top secret projects who were building machines. They made them stay there and wash windows until somebody came looking for them, which was one of the higher ranking officials over the project. And they said, where are my women at? We need them on this project. And they said, oh, sorry.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
Very crazy. So it's the top of the hour, Surlana. So let's take our break, and we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
right.
man.
It is.
I wanted one more.
What? Well, I could talk.
Okay, talk.
Stuff it in your mouth. I'm talking about the Reese's peanut butter cup thingy she has over there.
Teeny.
So you space cadets need to get your mind out of the gutter. So anyway, we were just chatting during the break about in the engagement of Surlana tonight. You know, I like it when she brings her A game. Because
I didn't. I bring my C game because I couldn't finish the book because there was so much going on.
Well, the thing is, what I was going to say is that
I feel bad about it.
You know, because most of the week you blow me off and you don't talk to me, and with the exception of watching the Queer Eye show.
Why do you put so much importance on talking?
Well, I like to talk
every day.
I mean, because I don't have many friends outside of.
Whose fault is that?
And you, I have deemed worthy of my conversation.
Listen. Okay, look. This is the rule. Okay, I get home before him. I work 7 to 4. So I work for the state. I get that option if I want to. So I'm home for 30 minutes, almost to an hour before 30 minutes before you get off at least, at 5. He will call me at 5 or just after.
Have I stopped calling you all the time? I have stopped calling you all the time.
If I don't have 30 minutes of quality, interesting, new topics of conversation, he gets mad. He is hung up. If I was like, well, I guess I'll just talk to you later. He is hung up on me because I wouldn't talk or I was boring. That is wrong. That is messed up in the head, people.
What's messed up is that
if the subject isn't about him, it's really bad.
No, it has nothing to do about me. It has everything to do with the fact that, through the course of the day, I read things, I see things, and I want to talk to you about. And
I do work.
And I do work too as well.
And you're not interested in the work I do. I mean, I can complain about it, but you don't want to hear. I'm sorry, I'm still opening things.
In fact, I don't think you need to open up another one, and I think we need to get back on track with this topics because everybody doesn't want to hear us complain.
Anyway, hold on. I'm sorry, these are really good. Now I have to have a little drink. We never said we were professional people.
Yeah, we're just entertainers. So
we're just here to amuse each other. If you happen to be listening, though, that's your problem.
Or it could be a bonus for some people.
All right. So you got these women coming back from this facility where they were making copies of the purple machine and the key machine. And they were doing this important work, but because of the reputation, the other women were getting abortions, whatever. They detained these women at the facility because they're like, oh, you bunch of loose women, you're not doing anything important. And then their commanding officer had to come get them out of there. Just an interesting look into the sexism at the time. All right. But the significance is they got these machines and it really helps. So these women who cracked the codes from the Japanese purple machine affected Japan's transport efforts. This was significant. And Dot Braden is still there working. Coming back to Dot. She was engrossed in something called Code System 2468. 2468 was the code given to anything going in, around, or over the Pacific water. Japan, basically. Dot deciphered messages by hand at first. Well, she got a lot of urgent ones. She had to do it by hand. So Dot would puzzle out a code and then run it to this room called the Overlappers Unit, which is just in another room in the same building. Mm-hmm. Oh, in this Overlappers room, the lady in charge was called Miriam. Miriam was a northerner. Dot is a southerner. Miriam would take Dot's messages and she would be like real condescending. And here's another look into the culture of the day. This is the 40s and you still have this North versus South mentality. Mm-hmm. Very strong. Maybe we still have it now, but I just don't encounter it. So Miriam was snotty. She's from New York. She said, I've never heard a southerner speak proper English. you know. So, needless to say, that irked Dot, and Dot noted that she thinks Miriam's yellow diamond and fiancé are both fake. But for all that they didn't like each other or didn't get along, they did work together seamlessly when it came to the code breaking. In fact, their efforts in code breaking made it to the staff of General MacArthur, or to a submarine captain, and it had significant impact on the war. Now, something Dot kept encountering over and over and over in her messages she was decoding, the Japanese stuff, was the word maru. M-A-R-U. This is a Japanese merchant ship naming convention. They would put the word maru at the end of the name of the ship, and they would name their warships after inanimate objects rather than people. So it would be like whatever the Japanese word is for wind, maru. Tree, maru. Whatever the Japanese word is for tree. So she began to learn maru, and basically maru means circle, which cracked me up because there's a really famous cat on YouTube called Maru, and it's fat. So I'm thinking maybe that's why they named it Maru, because it's like fat circle. So Dot was learning about, when she decrypted these things, she was learning about sailing schedules, water levels, cargo statuses of the ports, dates and times for sailing, and transportation of the dead and wounded. These Marus carried food, oil, and supplies, and human remains. And it was a very common word she kept finding. Now, as I said before, Dot's work was hard. It was exhausting. And even William Friedman ended up hospitalized over it because it was so intense. Now, one of the reasons it gave them fits, as I mentioned before, was the Japanese were constantly changing their cipher and the daily key, and we were struggling and scrambling to keep up. Our code division had to break 1,000 messages a day, and there was 30,000 of them coming in. These code women got some nifty specialized training, though. They took a 10-day course that explained the controls, indicators, and decipherment using squares and charts, traffic procedures, preambles, and message analysis. They even got trained on basic Japanese vocabulary that focused on shipping reports. So I imagine they taught them all the Japanese words that had anything to do with the shipping industry. And the code breaking department was growing and getting more efficient. They were using pneumatic tubes like we still use at the bank drive-thru and the drugstore drive-thru. So they could send messages quicker inside their facility, and it became more like an assembly line, for code breaking. And it was all designed and run and organized by the women. The success behind the U.S. Navy was code breakers, which were majority women. In fact, there was so much intelligence coming from code breaking women, the U.S. Navy couldn't even keep up with maneuvers to act on it all. The devastation on Japan's shipping was enormous due to our code breakers. Japanese soldiers went without food and medicine thanks to our sinking their ships in time based on decoded intelligence. Japanese troops couldn't reach places to give reinforcement. Now this stunned me, this fact. By the end of the World War II, more than 2/3 of the entire Japanese merchant marine fleet and warships were sunk, all from deciphered coded intelligence. In fact, Commander C.A. Lockwood said there was so much intelligence from decoded messages, every ship in the U.S. was busy, and it made it seem like, to Japan, like there was more American subs than there actually were in the Pacific Ocean, because we were just like, So, back in Arlington Hall, they were working very closely with a satellite unit in Australia and in New Zealand. And the intelligence they were sending back and forth between the three countries made it back to MacArthur, and it contributed to his success in his island hopping campaign. And code breaking actually helped to reduce the number of American casualties because we stopped a lot of things in time, you know. Now, Dot's unit was completely run by women, and she took pride in the work she did. Again, their decoded messages sunk enemy ships. And it said that in 1943, Japan's fleet was the greatest. In 1943, the greatest problem Japan's fleet faced was starvation, because we kept sinking their supply ships. And the 2/3 of the deaths were the result of starvation and lack of medical supplies. In fact, there was a story of this one enlisted Japanese man that said they had to make a 10-day supply of rice last 25 days, and they did it by chewing it raw. And like I said before, men didn't want these jobs because they were dead end and they get nowhere and you didn't get promoted, but the women did. They had high-ranking positions, oversee managerial supervisory positions, all thanks to code breaking or code making or building those machines. Women were cribbing, overlapping, tracking submarines, translating, transmitting, communicating overseas, and taking over jobs of enlisted men. And as one enlisted man said at the time, these code-breaking women did a better job since women were held to a higher standard to get their jobs. They were more qualified, whereas if you were physically fit, you're in the army, you know. It's like, we need you, get in. Whereas they could take the time to vet the women. And sadly, this is where my notes end because of time constraints. But there's so much in this book. This book is about 394 digital pages long on my phone, but it's also it's a great insight to the machines, like especially Enigma and how they worked. There is a ton of just factual accounts of you know, some of these battles we've had, but it's also a fascinating look into the culture of the time, sexism, prejudice, what women could and couldn't do, the expectations, which I already kind of knew.
But wouldn't you? You would agree that World War II is definitely a turning point for women in general.
Well, yeah, and see, you and I and everybody else knew about like Rosie the Riveter. You know, there's all these men left, and that left behind, I guess. I mean, they were too old or too young kids to do anything significant to serve. So you've got all the women, and they had to fill in the gaps in the manufacturing and taking over the jobs. And then, thank goodness, some women did go to college, or we wouldn't have code breakers. Someone is talking about sub movies in the chat, and I know you're going to want to comment on this.
Well, you know, I love sub movies.
Yes, I know you want to.
I think my favorite sub movie, I know this is going off into a different, slightly different tangent.
That's about World War II, right?
Run Silent, Run Deep with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable is one of my favorite movies.
Never seen it. What's good about it?
Well, it's a classic black and white movie. It's got two great actors.
Accurate?
It's got even, I would say, it's not like when you say accurate.
To what actually happened?
It's period accurate as far as, you know, movies are concerned. It even has Don Rickles in it, you know, which is kind of funny. And I mean, he's playing the straight character in this, and but you know, it's your typical movie. It takes place in the Pacific, and Clark Gable was in charge of a sub that got I guess sunk. But I mean, there were survivors out of the submarine that got sunk by the Japanese. But he goes back to Pearl Harbor. He's put on desk duty, and welcome, Muffin. Now the K-28 posts are going to start.
Muffin's here.
Yeah, so, but it was a good movie. You know, Clark Gable takes control of the ship that, you know, of the cap. It was going to be Charles. No, I forgot his name. Anyway, long story short, good movie. You should check it out, and it's definitely worth watching. Another good movie that I enjoyed immensely, but takes place in the Atlantic is the one with Matthew McConaughey, and I've forgotten it's the U and then the designation for the submarine because I forgot because Muffin has just totally just drained my brain cells.
You can't even see her. She's over here.
Another one is Crimson Tide, is a more modern submarine movie with Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, of all people. Not Gene Wilder, Gene Hackman. That's a good submarine movie. I mean, there's but and then how can I forget Das Boot? It's a movie about a German submarine, and it takes place on a German submarine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was mid '80s, somewhere in there, probably early '80s. Great movie. It was redubbed in English because originally it was filmed in German. So those are some good ones. But yeah, my all-time favorite one has to be the one with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable with Run Silent, Run Deep. Classic black and white movie because I love black and white movies in general.
This isn't a submarine movie, but I always enjoyed Mr. Roberts.
Real quick, Dan, for the win, yes, U571 is the one with the all right. And it's a really good movie. Submarine movie. But anyway, go ahead. I think it's just the thrilling... I'm sorry to interrupt again. It's the thrilling thing, like when
I've talked enough.
You have the submarines and they're underwater and they're all sweating bullets because they're dropping bombs, is the boat going to, the submarine going to explode or whatever, and being closed in with all those people, I can only imagine the funk, that these guys didn't really get to shower, So anyway, you were going to say.
Oh, I like the movie Mr. Roberts with Henry Fonda, Jack Lemmon. And there was another one that's kind of similar to it. I can't remember the name of it. It had, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis? I'm trying to remember what that one is.
Oh, what is that with Tony Curtis? It was another... I'm on IMDb. Hang on.
Now you made me remember another movie that was a good movie, the Mutiny on the Bounty, with Bogart.
I'll find it in a minute. Sorry about this.
This is a live show, Surlana.
Well, it was a World War II movie, wasn't it?
If that's what you're thinking, it was a World War II movie. Of
course, he was in Some Like It Hot, one of the best comedy movies ever.
Midway's a good movie. Kelly's Heroes. I used to watch that television show.
Mr. Corey. I cannot think of the name of it. Oh, I don't see it. Well, this could take forever,
Well, anyway. While we were talking about the, these code breakers, if you will,
Operation Petticoat.
That's another one, yeah.
I think it's Operation Petticoat. That's a Blake Edwards thing.
I was reminded of Alan Turing and his, code breaking exploits and, the British. Because, a lot of people credit him for breaking the Enigma code. I guess putting machine versus machine. We speak about women having a hard time during this time, but also gay men were being persecuted in the same fashion. They really had to lead a quiet life and couldn't come forward. And, of course, when he found out he was gay, that, they ended up giving him chemical castration. And ultimately,
Alan
I guess
Turing, you mean?
Yeah, and he ended up passing away, I guess, because of that, and very tragic. It's a good movie out there with Cumberbatch that plays him. And
yeah.
You should definitely Space Cadets, if you get a chance,
looks like
check
an
that.
Alien too.
Well, between him and Eon and all them, they do look alien-esque. So. Are you playing checkers over there?
No, I'm looking at the book. I'm kind of going. I'm going through the book, see if there's any tidbits I can release to you before.
Well, you know, as we do with all our guests, Surlana, can you wanna plug your social media and but no,
get on Amazon.com and look up Code Girls and buy the book. It is rich and dense with history. I like the way it goes from factual account to like a biopic of each one of these women, like from where they started to where they ended up. The nice thing about this book is that if you want to have a hard copy, you can get a hard copy book. I have a Kindle version.
If you want the Kindle digital, you can do that, or you can do what I did is get the audio book. For those people that are on the go and like to listen to something.
If you want just a brief introduction, you spend an hour, look up Code Girls on YouTube, and you'll hear the author Liza Mundy talk about her research and what it took to get this book made. Very fascinating stuff. Take about an hour.
Yeah, once you fast forward.
Once you fast forward past the blank stuff at the beginning of the video.
And then the few minutes of her husband.
Yeah.
You know.
Take the playhead and move it significantly into you start seeing a woman talk and then play it.
It's called scrubbing.
Scrubbing. Scrub it. Scrub the playhead till you see a woman talk. So, that is, I could have had more, but my goodness, is a big topic, and there's a lot of women to talk about. But I had no idea the significance of code breaking and that women did it, and I could not be more proud, honestly. We do have the phone line open if you're motivated. It's up to you if you feel like calling in. We're here at 713-701-5214.
And I guess we'll take some calls. You know what?
When we come back?
Yeah, we're going to do a break early so that way we don't have to interrupt if somebody decides to call.
And I can have another Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
You can chalk down 6 or more Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and life will be great. And bumper cars and all that good stuff. Let's see here.
You weren't ready, were you?
No, because this is a last second kind of thing, and you know, I'm trying to put it all together. But what does it matter?
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Sit down. Be good.
All right. We are
Be
back,
value.
and we are joined with the our usual guest caller.
Our marriage counselor, Bev.
How are you tonight, Bev?
Oh, I'm doing real good. Real good.
We missed you last week. We noticed that you and Bob were out.
Yeah, we were under the weather last week.
Oh, believe me, you don't have to tell us.
We're better today. You what, dear?
Oh, you don't have to tell us about being sick. We know all about that.
No. It's harder when you get older, sweetheart.
Yeah, it takes longer to get well.
Yes, it does. It does. And it's true, your body does not heal like it did when you were a kid. And every stupid thing you did as a kid, you could feel in your whole body.
Mm-hmm. Trust me, I feel that.
Old.
So it's been an interesting topic tonight, Bev, and I'm not implying anything about age or anything, but you have been, I guess, lived a rich life yourself, and you have a better perspective of times that were before maybe Surlana and myself. And how did you feel about the topic tonight?
It was like I said, I love learning new things about history. And I didn't know there were women codebreakers.
I didn't either.
I knew there was Indian ones. I can't remember what they were called.
Wind talkers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's it. I knew it was something.
That's
talker.
fascinating, too.
It is.
And for our audience doesn't know about the wind talkers, basically, there were select Indians that, American Indians that went to war, and we would give them, information, and they would translate that into their native tongue. And then, that since the, I guess people, I guess in Germany wouldn't know, how to speak Indian, or, American Indian, or, based on
there's
the
so
tribe.
many tribes.
There's so many
they
tribes.
Could be very localized, and
Right.
you'd have to be over here to know,
So, yeah, it's a fascinating story, too, as well.
But my goodness, this book goes into somewhat detail about what these codes were, how they went about breaking them, because some of the few ladies left alive still remembered how they did it, and they told the author how they did it, and they remembered all these Japanese words, and it was just really fascinating.
Wouldn't that be cool to actually talk to one of them?
Well, she did. She played clips of her interview on the lecture that I saw on YouTube. I'll have to link that on Twitter and my Facebook so people can see it. But it's real easy to find. Put in Code Girls. But that one lady, she's like, I was afraid the NSA was going to come and arrest me if I talked to you. That's how loyal they're still and scared they were. But I highly recommend at least listening to her lecture. It's about an hour long. I don't know why they didn't bother to edit that video better to get the dead air off the front of it. I don't know why it's all dead air, but the book is dense. The book was taking me forever, and I was like trying to speed read.
Well, put it in perspective. I usually listen to the audiobooks, and this audiobook is over 10 hours long. And so it is a lot of information to get through.
And I started Sunday of last week. So it's not like I was slacking off or anything, but so.
Wow. See, I can't be a speed reader.
Well, sometimes
I actually taught myself. I'm self-taught to read and comprehend what I'm reading, because I always had a problem with that. There was times I'd have to go 3 or 4 times over a paragraph just to really understand what it said. No one would take the time to teach me how to comprehend anything, so I taught myself. But yeah, that's one thing I've never been able to do is speed read, because I'd forget all of it.
Well, I had to do that when I was in college because I was an English major, because I had to read so many things at one time because of deadlines and everything. So I had to learn how to read it quick, absorb it, comprehend it, give my own spin on it, and move on. And then my parents were avid readers, just, you know, just of books in their own time. And we spent all of our free time, it seems like, in a bookstore, and they would go to the giant book meets, book swaps. I spent a ton of my teenage years at the paperback exchange store. And I'd go in there with 2 grocery sacks of books, exchange them out, you know, and leave with 3 grocery sacks of books. And
I doubt it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I wasn't saying anything.
I doubt if you guys remember bookmobiles.
Well, I personally didn't have bookmobiles, but they did have, back when I was in school in the 70s, they had Scholastic books, and what that was is that the school would, you know,
I love
it
that.
It was a couple of sheets of paper that kind of had books that were geared.
You could order books, yeah.
You could order books and pay for them, very affordable books. And that's, you know,
I never got to do it, though.
And that's what I always, when I have the conversations with some of our guests, talking about how I got into Bigfoot and reading UFOs and Loch Ness Monster, and which led to my likes of watching the show In Search Of. So yeah, we didn't have, I personally didn't have the mobile book thing, but you know, it's interesting to bring it up because I remember looking at a picture today of mobile library, where back in the 30s, well, I mean, back then it was like a lot of people didn't have access to libraries.
The library had to come to you.
It basically this van came in and it opened up like these food trucks, yes, and you could take a book and you know, read it, and then when they came back, you know, get another book, you know. So
I think
you know,
something that annoys Spaceboy, I don't know, maybe it doesn't, is that my parents did this. They would have a book in every room. They'd be in whatever state of reading it in that room, and then they go to another room, then they're reading a book in that room. So I adopted the habit of reading more than one book at a time.
You know, and
that's hard for me to do.
I was going to say I haven't really talked about this.
Well, for leisure reading, that's easy to do.
So basically, Surlana has this impression that I hate to read. And it's not like, because she's a very
Spaceboy hate words.
She basically paints me into this you know, false image. But the reality is that when I was a kid, I read a lot of things, and then there were things that I was forced to read, and not only forced to read out loud in front of my grandmother, and
that makes you a better reader.
And it just, I hated it. Because it's like, you know, put me on the spot and reading, and, you know, if I mess up, of course, you wouldn't get that impression now with me behind a mic, but, you know, I hated being corrected and all that other things. And so I guess, you know, I don't want to say I hate to read. It just, now that I'm older, it's like, I'm very selective with what I read, what I listen to, you know, and chiming in. And, you know, bless Surlana's heart, you know, great. She can read the Encyclopedia Britannica while balancing the dictionary and reading a Harlequin romance novel. And,
you're so full of crap.
And no, it's just
talented. She's talented.
Yeah, she's very talented, and well, she is talented, and she just doesn't want to take credit when credit's due.
And he doesn't like it because that takes time away from him. That's what it is.
No, I think that if you budgeted your time more correctly, then, you know, I would get some me time with you versus your. Stop staring at the ceiling.
Oh, here we go.
You're looking like Stevie Wonder over there. This
is Stevie Wonder.
You know, and our audience can't see that.
I know, but that's not the point.
Going back and forth. That's Stevie Wonder.
I'm only here for your entertainment, dear.
Anyway, so I read, and this program does force me to bone up on certain topics and to read and if it's an audiobook and that's how you want to do it, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's the same information. It's kind of like when I'm at work. I can't really read when I'm at work. I'm busy doing something, so I listen to the audiobook and get through the day.
I can be sneaky about it.
And I believe that some days when you say, "Oh, I was so busy at work,"
I have been. I really have been.
You were just sitting there reading a book.
No, I have been cranking out graphics like I'm in a flipping factory. I won't get into that.
Anyway, thank you, Bev, for bringing this out tonight. Our space cadets really appreciate you really trying to make us fight.
I just call in. I don't.
But you've enjoyed the topic
on you guys like that.
Have you enjoyed the topic though, Bev? I mean,
yes, I have. And another thing that really amazes me is how they lived back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and the women were treated like less than human, even in that year, or even in that era.
I don't think it started to change until the 60s.
Yeah, it didn't really.
I mean, Bev, let me ask you an honest question here. I mean,
sure.
Did you, over the span of your life, have you felt a change in with women's liberation?
Oh yeah, yes, a lot. Because I can remember when women were paid a lot less than men.
They're still paid less than men, unfortunately.
Well, not as much as they were when I was.
Oh, sure, but still not completely fair.
I was born in '58, so
she's the same age as my brother.
I'll be 60 in June.
Yeah, that's the same year my brother was born. I think. You'd think I'd know, but I don't.
Bob will be 58.
But it is true what you're saying that women today, they've made such great strides to where we're at now. I mean, there's still not to say that there is not more road to cover to get where we need to be.
Is.
I mean, but I think that Surlana needs to
more like equals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And back then, the only thing you were good for is
breaking out youngins, yeah. And I just don't understand why it had to be that way for so long.
I know. Women can do just as much as men can.
And Bob is pointing out that women make the same in factories as men.
Factories, yep.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were having a discussion at some point. I was telling you because of stuff I was doing at work. I don't know what the word feminist means. I don't know what that's supposed to entail. I don't know if I am one or if I'm not one. All I know is what rights I want as a human being and how I want equality. Does that make me a feminist? I'm not out to get men. I don't think everybody should be castrated or anything. I'm just like, hey, to each his own. Just let me have what I'm entitled to, and we're fine. So yeah. I don't even know what that means, that term.
I don't even know what a feminist means neither. Right?
I don't know what a feminazi is either. Maybe that's a radical militant feminist. Yeah, that's a.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, that's been around for a while.
Well, basically, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines feminism as the theory of political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. So,
but I associate it with extremism for some reason. Well, why is that?
Well, with any movement, you're going to have people that are far left, far right in
when you say the word feminist, I think, ugh, that's sort of my gut reaction is.
But what it comes down to is you must ask the question, Surlana, or answer it to yourself is, do you want equality where it comes to political, economic, and social equality?
Yes, but I'm not going to get up in your face about it.
With the sexes, that is. Mm-hmm. Believe me, you have your own way of putting
I'm not going to burn my bra. I've only got 3 of them left. They keep falling apart.
Oh, my God. Oh, Lord. But, and then another thing is, hello?
Yeah, we're still
here.
Believe it or not.
I'm just staring at
We're still here for another 20 minutes.
But, another thing that fascinated me about that time is man, the families. Good Lord, you had 10, 12 kids back then.
Yeah.
Well, that's because
long
of the mentality,
winter nights, nothing to do.
Mentality of
you have
farming.
to raise your own crew,
your
workers. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm thinking that's why my dad was the oldest of 6, and they lived on a farm in Mississippi. Man, I wish I could call my dad and get him to just talk about his childhood.
Yeah.
'Cause he was born in 35.
My dad was born in, let's see, he's been gone 18 years now, and he was 75 when he died, so that means he'd have been, 90? No, 100 at least.
Mm.
But, I mean, and he would tell us stories about, him growing up. He came from a family of 7 or 8 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was rough.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was old enough to serve in 2. He served in 2 in the Merchant Marines.
Hmm.
His brother was killed in Iwo Jima. Uncle Junior. So, and another thing that upsets me a lot is these people that disrespect the flag. I don't know, that just came out of thin air.
It's important to know that I agree with you in the sense that the disrespect of the flag, but it's also important to know that it's their right to do so. It may not seem like it seems like a crime when you look at it, but people have the right to do that, and we can't take that right away from them. Because if we start there, it's a domino effect. When we start taking away rights from people, and then that just tears down what America's all about. So, sure, it's sad to see something like that, because when we think about all the people who have fought for this country, whether it be these code girls or whether it be military personnel who have gone overseas and lost their lives, to just different things when it comes to the good and positive things that the country has done. It's sad, and I will agree with you there.
Yeah. And I come from a military background. I mean, my great granddads were in 1. Both of my granddads were in 2, or my granddads were in 1, and my dad and brother, or dad and his brother, and my mom's brother, they were in 2, and it's just, I guess it just hits me the wrong way.
Oh, I can understand. It sounds like you've had a family that's been rich in military tradition, and I can understand that the sacrifices they've made to this country, and which I respect and appreciate. It cuts deep when we see people burn the flag or disrespect it in some way, and it's hard because you have a a perception of what that flag represents, and it represents to you the hard-working individuals of your family that have gone to fight for this country and the things that they believe in and have upheld. And so I can understand where that sadness comes from. But it's also important, Bev, to understand that it's a flag. At the end of the day, you can't tear down the spirit of Americans. You can't burn that away. It's emblazoned. And then that's why when World War II broke out, as a nation, we came together and made sacrifices. As you saw, when Surlana was talking about how people were giving up things. They were doing drives for metal drives to collect metal, to collect tin, so they could build the tanks and do things. And while they were cutting off power so that the enemy couldn't spot us from the Atlantic Ocean, the German U-boats and things of that nature, we all came together at a time when it was necessary. And that is the thing at the end of the day that we have to remember as a people, that when we needed to come together, we did. And that's what we should cherish most of all.
Yes, yeah. That's true. I do have a question for you.
Shoot.
Dealing with World War II, do you guys think that Hitler escaped?
Now that is a very interesting. Or I'm sorry, let you finish.
One of the greatest conspiracy theories of all time.
Or commit suicide.
Well, there is some evidence that point that Hitler possibly escaped World War II and made his way down to Argentina,
or
with
the
his
South Pole.
Girlfriend
Ava Braun.
And
Ava Braun.
LeBron.
Ava Braun.
And
Ava. Not LeBron James.
I knew it started with. I knew it started with an A.
Or it might be.
That's one thing that's always fascinated me.
I remember reading some reports and seeing some videos of a journalist who was talking about Hitler making his way to Argentina, and there was a spot in Argentina which had a compound that was ran by Germans. And one of the pictures that came out was a picture that looked a lot like Hitler, without his mustache, his hair a little bit less, but definitely looking. And I know Surlana mentioned, Hitler could have been. That's okay. I get interrupted all the time.
No, I was laughing at Dan.
Yeah.
It's Ava Braun. It's EvaBraun. She was the mistress and then later wife of Adolf Hitler.
And Surlana brought up a good one too. Was that I don't know if you know about the story about Admiral Byrd going down to Antarctica and finding. I guess they were looking for Germans held up in Antarctica, and the slash UFOs that attacked the fleet, and a very interesting story. There's a possibility that Hitler could have made his way down that way, and so. Because, there was this big push to try to set up a base of some kind in case World War II ended not in Germany's favor. There's a
conspiracy about, is it Antarctica?
Mm-hmm.
Antarctica, aliens, and Hitler.
That's what I was just talking about. Yeah. Thanks for joining the show, Surlana.
Yeah, well, I was distracted by this article that says what Hitler's sex life was really like.
Now you're probably playing into Dan's post that he just did in the...
There you go!
Well, let me put this in chat so Dan can look at this.
Well, I really don't think we'll really ever know the truth.
No, if they won't do disclosure, we're never going to know the truth about Hitler.
Just like we'll never know the truth about Kennedy. I still think he was shot by his own government.
Yeah, that guy who headed the investigation. Dulles, was it Dulles? He was probably behind it. Alan Dulles.
Well, Bev, we're getting close to wrap-up time, and we appreciate you calling in, and we're glad that you and Bob made it in this evening, and that you're feeling better.
Oh, we are too. This was really interesting, Surlana, dear.
Thank you. I hope it was interesting enough, even though I missed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
Well, you only have so long to do something. But it was great. I mean, fascinating. You are so awesome, my dear.
I'm just chopped liver.
I know how to do one thing. It's read.
You're awesome too, Space Boy.
I can read and make notes. That's the only thing I know how to do.
All right, Bev. We love you, dear.
We love you too. Bye. You guys have a good week.
Yes. Talk to you next week.
Bye, Bev.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Well, we got to a phone call without it devolving into domestic dispute.
True.
So that was good. So what do we got coming up next week?
I thought you were going to announce that.
Is it Steve or Steven?
Yes.
Steve Colburn is a carbon fiber nanotube expert, as well as a former patient of Dr. Lear's. So he is an alien implant analyst. So I'll begin my research on him tomorrow, and we'll be talking to him. And I'm jazzed to learn about carbon fiber nanotubes because I think they're really significant. They've got some significance in technology. So I'll try to bring my A game so we talk to him so it'll sound like an idiot.
And once again, we thank all those who have been sending us guest recommendations through contact at spaceboyuniverse.com. That's contact at spaceboyuniverse.com. Yeah, keep your suggestions coming. We've reached out to those who we can, and we're waiting to hear back on a few people. But it's people like our space cadets that give us some great information. And
we've also got some ideas just for topics in case we don't. For coming up. So,
and if you liked history, man, we love history too, and just look for more history topics to come in the near future because we have been discussing that behind the mic, and
on our topics, gaming is one of our topics. There is an awesome Steam sale going on Steam powered Valve for PC gaming.
I bought 4 games yesterday.
I bought 1. And I still have $26 credit on my Steam wallet.
How did you get that credit?
I was on the phone at work, and this cheeky coworker I've got in mind just comes and slaps down a $20 Steam gift card.
That's very.
I don't know
nice.
why he did that.
Probably because you like Steam.
Well, it's probably because I've been bitching all week about stuff, and he's trying to make me feel better, I guess.
So anyway, there you go. Next week's guest, an actual person.
An actual guest.
Yeah, an actual guest.
Person, an actual guest.
Yes, and we have to thank once again our space
broadcast
angel. That would be Surlana Blu-ray.
Surlana Blu-ray.
I'm sure when she hears that, she'll crack up.
She will laugh.
Anyway, so Laura's Blu-ray, man, you know we love her, and you do too. And
it's pretty funny.
We constantly like to give credit where credit is due. So we love you, Sir Laura. You know we do. All right, Surlana, let's get in the rocket and get out of here, shall we?
Okay.
All right, so join us next week. Bye-bye.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Surlana. Executive producer is Surlana. Social media producer is Dennis Koch. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Mark S, and Bob N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.